Welcome back to the Failing Adds Up podcast. My name is Antonio Romero, and alongside with me on every single episode, I got
Junior Ibarra. See, I put in the R's every once in a while.
You're starting to add them in every now and then, huh?
I need to add that Latino spin to it.
Yeah, a little spice to it, huh?
roll the R's a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit of rolling in.
Got to.
Rolling into the Failing Adds Up podcast with the
Yes. Exactly.
Yes.
So, Junior, how's your day going? It's a beautiful Friday here. You know, we have had some okay-ish weather. I say okay because it's been raining a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the rain every now and then.
Yeah, we need the rain here just in the aspect of, like, everything needs to turn green. So I love seeing this every we have lots of seasons here in Iowa, so it's cool to kind of see all the seasons. Just like in business in general, you have lots of seasons, right? So anyhow, today's been a good day. And then later we have some volleyball action going. So
we just joined the volleyball league, so we're gonna be diving, bumping, spiking, all of it, huh?
Right. I'm gonna spike every ball.
Hey, tying it in. I mean, the rain clouds bring the flowers. You know, I mean, the failing adds up. The rain clouds, the thunder clouds, the rain is what brings the sun.
Everything, all those analogies apply, right? So we're super excited to be talking about this guest today, and he's already adding value right there and spinning off with the analogies. And so I'll go ahead and make that introduction. And so we have Jared Husmann with us. He's a commercial real estate professional. He's an investor. He's a serial entrepreneur. And this is kind of cool because I've actually known him for a very long time, and he has my mad respects of the type of person he is and the work ethic he has. So now everybody gets to learn about what he's done, how he's grown, and where he's at. And he's one of the fastest growing commercial real estate advisors and agents here in our metro area. And he's just getting started. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. So Jared, welcome.
Welcome. Good to be here. Glad to be here. I've known you a long time. Back when we got licensed as agents, I think within 3 or 4 months of each other. It was basically before you were a junior.
Yes.
So how'd you meet him, as a junior or not as a junior?
Well, I'll add some some little insight to this. So, while I was still an engineer, I was out looking and investing at properties and got connected with a fellow that will at some point or another introduce into this world too, and his name was Caleb, and we'll leave it at that for now. And through that world, some other investors too, a guy named Ryan and other investors, and I just kept hearing them talk about these teenagers that were investing in real estate, and their names just kept popping up. They're like there's these twin brothers that are investing in real estate, and they're 19 and they're already own 24 doors and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, who are these cats, And so eventually we got to shake hands because the Des Moines circle of investors is pretty small, just like almost in any market. You figure out who the players are pretty quickly, right? And so that's how I first remember meeting these guys, is in that small group of investors that were doing lots of deals. Because I think between all of us, we were doing 60 deals a year or more, right?
Yeah.
And so then I got to meet them. I'm like, oh my God, they are 19 years old and they're buying tons of properties. And that's my first memory of this.
I think we were 23, 24 though. I think we weren't quite 19.
Really?
We were a couple years in.
Yeah.
Because I started at 18, bought my first house at 18, used some savings to buy that. Dad co-signed the loan. Then my next 2 deals I did by myself. And
wait. Let's before we get into that though, because we're you have a super cool story to share around what happened during that time. Yet, we kind of like to start with some pivotal moments in your life, of how you grew up that maybe shaped you who you are. So,
Sure.
What are some of those moments? Whether you want to start when you were a kid or middle school or high school or whatever it is, whether it's memories with your parents or whatnot, are there moments in time that kind of help shape what you believe, who you are, and why you became an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, I mean, probably all started one day when mom and dad loved each other very much, and it just led to twins. At the end of the day, I was Donald Trump says this a lot in his book, The Art of the Deal. He calls himself part of the, I think he calls this, or he says something to the lines of the effect of, I was part of the Lucky Sperm group, right? So, and that's me. And I'll be honest here, like I was super fortunate. I give a lot of credence to my family, how I grew up. My maternal grandfather was a home builder in Anamosa. He just passed away this past year, but was 60 years of building homes and apartments in our community. In the 6-year period, built over 400 homes.
Oh, wow.
So do some math on that. It's like 8 a year.
And where was this taking place?
Eastern Iowa. It's over Anamosa.
Okay.
He actually has built, we did the math on it actually when he passed away, he built 1 out of every 4 homes in our hometown.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like, so you walk through the neighborhood and 1 out of 4 homes was built by your
crazy.
grandfather. Yeah, crazy, right? And so, and ironically enough, my dad was always an entrepreneur too. So I say maternal grandfather. So my mom's side was very entrepreneurial, but my dad always had a bug for entrepreneurship as well. And he started up his own electrical contracting business, was electrical, owner for small business when I was 5 or 6 years old. And so I grew up around this whole idea of entrepreneurship, of owning your own business for a long, long time. And how I grew up was very simply, Dad would go work. Mom would work a full daytime job, come back, take care of me and my brother for dinner, and then she'd go into the office and do office work for my dad because she helped as an admin. So Mom basically worked 2 jobs and raised us, while my dad would go out and travel. He would leave Monday morning. He'd come back Friday night. So I didn't see my dad during the week at all when I was a kid. Not until I was probably 12, 13 years old did I start seeing my dad. Like, the idea of growing up with my dad just wasn't common. He was always there on the weekends. So we always had family time on the weekends, and Dad was very present on the weekends, but during the week, Mom and Dad worked. So the idea of, like, volleyball or, like,
any sort of sports.
Yeah, any sports like that, or like my parents being around during the week just was foreign to me because my parents worked, and that's how I grew up. And that really solidified a lot of the belief systems my brother and I actually created and we still carry to us, is the idea of, like, you just work. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, well,
because that's all you saw.
That's all we saw.
Up,
like,
yeah.
my parents worked from a very young childhood, and then they instilled us also the entrepreneurial spirit by how they were. Now, what's interesting enough is I still remember a lot when I was 13 years old or so. Dad at that point, he had spent 8 years building the business up, and he started to get into real estate development at that time. And my dad, just by good nature, wants to spend time with his kids, spend time with your boys, right? So what he would just do is he was like, I want my boys to go with me just because I want to be with my family. That's part of the reason why. He also wants to teach us the business. So what he would just do a lot is he'd just say, I remember this vividly still. This is so cool when you're younger. Hey, boys, what are you doing today in school? And you're like, not much. Like, you getting A's? Yeah, because we both naturally got A's. We were good students. All right, cool. I'm going to call you in sick today. We're going to go meet a city mayor. We're going to go talk about a TIF we're doing on a development project. Or I want you to go meet some banker. And a lot of times these were like VPs of banks or mayors or engineers or architects. And his rules of thumb were always, you have to be business casual, and you have to shut up and sit down, basically, and ask me questions afterwards. So, like, and then in the summers when we didn't have, sports, we were working for Dad or Grandpa. Dad or Grandpa on the construction. We were the gophers. We were the bitch workers. We had to go do all that little stuff. And then during the school year, we'd go on business meetings. So we kind of had that white-collar experience during the school year going on these business meetings. And then in the summers, we were the blue-collar grunt workers doing all that work. So we kind of got the best of both worlds. And what was interesting about that time frame as well, that I've since learned as we've gotten older and experienced as well, is that people aren't the pedestal you put them on. Sometimes we put these VPs of these bankers or these engineers or these architects, these mayors, these presidents, whatever it is, like at a high level and think, oh my God, like these guys are just so far above wherever I'm at. And as I started getting into my business career in my teens and in my 20s, I started looking at people like people.
Just normal.
Just normal people.
Yeah, everyone's normal. Everyone's the same.
And that's going to tie back as I go further along. I'll tie that back around in a second later on. But that's just how I grew up. And so that happened. My mom started reading and getting into this guy called Robert Kiyosaki when I was like 14, 15. And she encouraged me to read this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was like 15, 16. And I was like, I'm not going to read that book. I don't need self-help. I'm a 16-year-old kid and I got all the answers. Like,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
who needs self-help?
Yeah.
That's for those idiots who don't know who they are. And I know who I am. I'm 15 years old. I got the world conquered.
Right.
I don't need no help. And so, again, so my dad was doing his development stuff and also had his electrical business. At that time, Mom started getting a little bit into rental houses. And my grandpa had already owned a few rental properties as well and houses over the years, so she kind of had that background. And Grandpa was always very encouraging of my dad and Mom in their investment career and their entrepreneurship, which in both sides of the family wasn't common, both dad's side and Mom's side. So Mom gets into Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad. I'm 14, 15. At this point in time, all I've ever seen is 12, 13 years old, work for my dad and Grandpa in the summers. I once in a while go on meetings with Dad. I just saw his time with Dad. I just was like, cool. I'm out of school, time with Dad, like double whammy. No point thought about business.
That's all you cared about was just spending time with him.
Yeah, it was just cool.
Curious to know on any of those trips with Dad, like, did he ever like show you up on anything like electrical or construction?
Oh
or
my
like,
God!
Because my dad was an electrician, and so I have some stories of like how he taught me some things, and then he would just be like, "Yeah, you don't know what you're doing."
Can he let you just shock yourself or what?
He never did that. But there's one thing that I did take to heart that I actually say that now that you say that. I remember we were joking one time. We were on a job site. This is actually more a couple of times. And we joked because my dad was always on the phone. We'd go to a job site and Dad would be on the phone the whole damn time. And we'd all be the
like working away,
working away, right? And we're always like, yeah, Dad never works. And then, son of a bitch, the dad would come over and he would get more done in 30 minutes than we'd get done in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And he would just come over and he'd be like, just remember, boys, that's why I'm the master. Because he was a master electrician. That's why I'm the boss. That's why I'm the owner and the leader. And so that's a skill set I think that's really important, I think, for all of us. Having gone through two different things I learned from that is we sometimes, and not always the case, sometimes we think our bosses don't always know as much as we know. Like, oh, we know how to do this. But a lot of times the boss knows this. We've had discussions before, like being agents, when we have some of our teammates who are like, you don't know how to make cold calls, or you don't know how to make a call, or you don't know how to sell a listing or do this, and you're just like, all right, little pipsqueak, like sit down,
this.
shut up. I got
all
you.
the hours that you did before that they didn't see.
Just watch, like I got this. And also one thing that taught me as well is one thing my dad and Grandpa and Mom all instilled in me was they were never too good for any role. Now, one thing my dad taught me on those job sites is I'm going to ask you to do something. Just because I'm asking you to do it doesn't mean I'm not willing to do it myself. I don't want to do it. I don't want to be the gopher. I don't want to go do this. But just because I'm asking you doesn't mean I'm not willing to go do it. So
they put their pride aside, no matter what it is, right? That type of leader is like, there's nothing, like I see that as a common theme as we like interview people on this. Yeah. It's like you see the people that are successful, they are willing to be the photographer, even though they're the ones hiring the photographer, or whatever that case might be. And they like, if it needs done, I'll get it done if no one else can do it. Yeah.
Right? Well, I mean, a case in point I think about all the time is like, look, do I like working nights and weekends? Do I like working Sundays? No, I do believe I am a man of faith, man of Christianity. Do I believe in taking a day off, the weekend, the Sabbath, whatever you want to call it? With that being said, am I willing to put the work in on a night weekend? You better believe it. Am I the guy that's like, hey, I don't want to take out the trash, but you better believe I will. And this actually ties into a point I remember a lot, and this ties back just how I was raised. This is something I forgot until you brought it up a little bit, but I remember one time we were cleaning out a house that a tenant had vacated, and they destroyed the house, which never happens, but it'll happen if you've owned rental properties. And to give context, the woman was a bit sizable in her physique. And the toilet was a little bit wobbly. And so we had to rip the toilet off and replace it. And there's the wax ring. If you know how toilets work, there's a wax ring that protects it, keeps the seal so all the water goes down. If that toilet rocks, then all the water, urine, feces will seep into that wax ring. And this ties back around. And I remember my dad, when I was 15 or 16, we were fixing up a house to get turned over. And Dad looks at the wax ring and goes, "You're going to rip that off and get ready for a new wax ring." I said, "How?" He goes, "Use your hands." And I'm like, "What? Like, have you seen that? I'm not touching that, And Dad's like, "Yeah, you're the one doing it." But I knew he was willing to do it himself. Like, it's not. He gave it to me as the role. I was the grunt. I had to do it. Would he do it himself? He would have. but he had me to do it. And then there was a whole other story there where I didn't have a glove, and I said, well, what do I use? I said, how many gloves? He goes, well, just don't touch your face. It was like, okay, Rip, that's really disgusting, and go wash your hands as soon as you can find a place to wash your hands.
Yeah.
So really disgusting. But again, it was that discipline of like, I'm gonna outsource this to you, but you better believe if you don't do it, I will. And if you don't do it, I'm gonna be pissed. Mm-hmm. And it was very much like for me, how I grew up, and I'm not sure how you guys grew up as well, but how I grew up is the disappointment from mom and dad was probably worse than anything they could have done to me. Like disappointment of like, I'm disappointed that you didn't step up.
Those words hurt way more than anything else.
That was way worse than any kind of spanking or yelling. Like they could just be like, okay, then go away. And it was like, shit.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how that happened. But again, fast forward a little bit, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was 16. And I joke, it was just to get my mom off my back, because everybody wants to get their mom off their back once in a while. And God bless my mother. Tell a story a lot. And it was a day like today. It was kind of cloudy, kind of rainy. And I'm sitting there, and it's like in the summer, and it's raining, and reading this book. And I jokingly say, the heavens opened up, and then the light came down, and God's voice came out, and it was like, Jared, this is what you are meant to do. And it was a light bulb moment for me, because prior to that, I'd always wanted to go into the Air Force and be a pilot and fly for the Air Force and fly the F-16s. That's what my dad worked on when he was in the Air Force. And I always wanted to go that route. And I had that moment where, it really was. It was a moment for me where it was just like, this is it. And I've never felt anything as clear as like, well, I have a couple of things clear, but that was one of the moments where it was very clear to me that this is what I'm supposed to do. And I say that because ever since then, at no point, people have asked me over the years sometimes, like, how do you get through the tough points and the shit that we're all going to have to go through in this life, in business, whatever you want to call it. And it was like, what do you mean? I don't understand why you even ask that question, because I've always known this is what I meant to be.
It's your vision that you have.
No, it's just there's no going back. I mean, it's like people would ask you, like I'm sure they'd ask you, Junior, like, man, how do you manage being an entrepreneur and a dad at all times? And you're like, I just do. Like there's not a question mark of like how I manage it. It's I am going to do it. There is no point.
There's no matter what happens. You're right. Now that I'd never
like,
really looked at it like that, but you're right. Like people pose that question, and I'm like, well, this is you
don't know anything else other than that. Like
you're like, there's no quitting. Like that word doesn't even.
It's not an option.
Doesn't even cross my mind, right? Like
yeah, and I remember this because I remember when you and Trish got married and you had Max, your first, and you were an entrepreneur and you were already busy and already growing this IRG that you were building. And at some point, I'm not sure if you had a moment or not. We don't need to go into your story if you'd like, but at some point there was a moment and you're just like, this is my life. And there's no question mark about it. There was no like sitting down and thinking through it. It's like, no, I am a dad and I'm a business owner, and there is no question. I'm both.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. And I don't want to speak on your behalf. There are moments in time. Have you had those moments where you're like, damn, is this what I'm supposed to be like? Should I do something different? Or like, when I said like the word quitting doesn't cross my mind, it does, but like it's a human thing. Mm-hmm. Yet that you're built to like have the discipline to just overcome it. Like you're never gonna actually quit. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that ever crosses your mind. You're like, man, is this worth it? Maybe that question,
yeah.
Is it worth it? Not necessarily quitting. Like, is this sacrifice worth it? And then, but because we all encounter those moments in time in business and in life, mm-hmm. Is this worth it? Yet you're like,
spoiler alert, it's worth it.
Yeah, right.
Spoiler alert, it's worth it. I can say that. Yeah. And I'm still very much on the journey.
Like just to make sure we're all like we know the timeline of everything. This is at 16 when you had this moment.
Yeah. Yep.
This is what I'm doing. And the moment was owning real estate.
It was real estate. It was real estate entrepreneurship. I'm not going to say real estate ownership, real estate investment. It was real estate entrepreneurship.
But you didn't exactly know what that meant.
No, I just knew it was real estate. And looking back on this, is why I always lead with very fortunate with my grandpa and my dad and my mom. because I already had real estate as a background and real estate entrepreneurship as a background, both from the construction business, from electrical business, from my mom ownership, dad developing, owning stuff, grandpa owning stuff. I already had so much of the real estate and the business in my blood
Right.
that I didn't even realize it until like that moment. And even then, it's more after the fact I've realized like, oh my God, like people ask me why I'm in real estate. I'm like, well, why does a fish swim? Like you're just in water so much. I didn't realize how much I was around real estate until later on in life.
Well, also probably because like that was just normal to you, right? Where these
Yeah.
like everyone has their own life where things are normal to them. They're
Yeah.
just accustomed to it because that's all they know.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just, and not everybody's gonna have maybe that like I had this like a light bulb moment. Not everybody's maybe gonna have that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And if you do have it, you're very fortunate. If you don't have it, doesn't mean it's wrong. But I know for me, that was a moment where it was like, this is what I meant to do. This is why people have asked me too, like, well, why don't you do, like private equity or hedge funds or stocks? And I've looked into all those over the years. I absolutely have studied the other business models, but I always come back to real estate, and I'm like, why? It's what I know. I mean, that's just simple like that. Like, it's just what I know. Do I enjoy business? Yes. Do I enjoy?
It's almost like saying like,
that.
why do you like the color blue? Because I just do.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. It's like, why? Because it is who I am. And I was fortunate to have that experience where it's just like, I know that, and I've had time to reflect on that.
So at 16, you had this light bulb moment, and
Mm-hmm.
can you kind of take us on the journey of, what followed after that?
Oh, yeah. So that was 16. Spent 2 years then learning about it. We did do Rich Dad training classes over the weekends. And this is a time I was a sophomore going into my junior year of high school. And perspective-wise, and it's all these, this goes back to like little things you've learned in the years, but like at that time, it was weird because I was already having the mindset for business and the mindset for real estate and the mindset to be a career.
And was your brother very similar to that too? Or?
He was, but he wasn't as much as me. He's kind of
Okay.
a little bit behind me. He still has that very much. He's doing some really good, cool things right now. I was just talking to my mom about that actually on the drive over here, which is also really cool. Getting into some stories about family as well, maybe. But what I was going to say on that is that we all look at this now, like looking back, and you're like, man, that's so cool that like you were 16 doing this. Okay, I want to paint in perspective here. You're 16, 17 years old, and you're having no friends, no girlfriend, no time, because literally your nights and weekends are spent like studying real estate. Like everybody looks at that and they're like, oh man, that must have been fun. And it was like, yeah, I did do sports and I had friends. But when my friends on the weekends wanted to like go out and party, I was the one reading a motivational book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Or I was reading
Right.
some book about the economy.
You don't see that behind the scene part.
Yeah, and like you don't realize the fact that like I legitimately didn't have my first girlfriend until my senior year of high school, and then we broke up because of fight basically, and we lasted 3 months. I didn't have my really first girlfriend until I was like out of college. So everybody looks at this and is like, "Oh my God, like that's so cool now." And you're like, "Yeah, but I gave up all my friends, all my party time, all of my experience in the romantic environment because I was dedicated towards this thing called real estate for my junior, senior year, freshman year, sophomore year, junior year of college, high school, all that."
And that's a really good point because I feel like a lot of times people don't understand the amount of sacrifices
Yeah.
it actually does take.
And that's why I want to bring that up, is that like everybody looks back, and it's so easy for us all to look back and be like, wow, that was so cool. But in the moment, you have to realize what you're giving up. And everybody looks back on it now. It's easy to look back on these things now and be like, wow, it's such an easy choice to make, until you're actually in the moment and you're making that choice. You know, I mean, we're lucky here. Anamosa, we have a professional football player named Marshall Yanda. He's since retired. Hopefully makes Hall of Fame. He's already been multiple winning championships with the Baltimore Ravens. He tells a story one time how he stayed in school when he was, I think, a sophomore at NIAC all throughout the summer to study and get his grades so he could play football for University of Iowa in the spring. And he goes, looking back, it was a great experience, and it actually changed the trajectory of my entire life. But he goes, in the moment, I was a 20-year-old kid, 19-year-old kid, giving up my summer to go to school and work hard. Like, I gave up that. Like, he goes, in the moment, it was a really hard choice, but, like, looking back, it was a great choice.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to bring up the whole point of, like, from 16 to 18 and even further along, I spent these weekends going to these trainings throughout high school. I'd do high school during the week, and then the weekends I'd do these trainings. I would literally go to school. I'd work out in the morning at 5 a.m., go to school, go to football practice, soccer practice, wrestling practice, whatever it was. Then after that, I'd go to dinner, and I'd analyze deals with my parents over the dinner table. And then I would look at deals on the weekends and nights with them as well. So, like, these are all things I was building up, and I was giving up a lot of friends, a lot of family. What it did do really cool, though, was it made my family really close. So my brother, my twin brother, my fraternal twin brother, and I, mom and dad and I were all really close. And then fast forward a couple of years later, I get out of high school. I'm 18. Now I can sign a loan. So I buy my first house.
And you were working?
I was working for the summers and stuff. I only ever had one job, and it was for the Subway franchise. The subs.
The subs.
Yeah, subs. And did that.
Artist.
You were there $5. Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, right. I did that for about 3 months and then I quit because I hated it. So I've never had a true job. I've had jobs from my grandpa and my dad, but I've never had a true job.
Like a
so
W-2,
yeah. So I don't understand that concept. So did that for a little bit, but really wasn't my thing. Now, that being said, one thing I want to tie back for a second here. This is important. I remember I did get my job at Subway. And one thing my dad said to me when I was going to get this job was, like, I don't really want to get a job, but I kind of want to make some extra money. And my dad just said, Jared, look at it this way. Go to Subway, work for them, and figure out how you can own a franchise. Or figure out how you can build the systems to go build your own business someday. So, like, that's the kind of environment I was around. Like, my dad didn't say, like, go get a job. It was like, go figure out what you can do or how you can add value or what you can do better. So, like, that's kind of the environment I took that in. But anyway, fast forward, 18, buying my first investment house. Now, perspective-wise, again, so everybody understands this. This was a little house. It's a 1-bed, 1-bath, 350-square-foot house. In a little town called Oxford Junction, Iowa. It's a town of like 800 people. I bought it for $16,000 and put $4,000 down. And I had a loan of $12,000 on it, and I put a few $1,000s into work, and I rented it out for $300 a month. And that was my first investment property. And one of my favorite sayings is, my two favorite investment properties are always my first one, because I became a real estate investor that day in the smallest capacity, but I could say I was a real estate investor. I own a house. I'm renting it out. I'm going to conquer the world. Got you, Donald. I'm coming after you. I'm 18. So that's my favorite investment deal, and then my other favorite investment deal is my next one. It's always my next one. You'll ask me, like, what's your favorite investment deal? I'm like, well, the first one and the next one. Yeah, those are my two favorite deals.
Cool. I haven't heard that before. That's cool.
Well, that's like it's always my joke. I made this joke the other day. I said my favorite business travel, my favorite trip is my next trip. My favorite year in business is my next year in business. And my favorite kid's my next kid. My favorite wife's my next wife. Right? I mean, that's how I always gotta say.
Take it to that extreme.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what there's a law of diminishing returns. I found if you get married more than a couple of times, your wealth diminishes very quickly. It's a shocking number. The more times you're married, the more wealth. Maybe that's why Donald's kind of going slowly downhill. He's been married 4 or 5 times, or 3 times.
That's one theory, right? So then, so after your first one, did you get the bug? Or what happened after the first one?
Yeah, so the first one was I was 18.
And you just graduated high school, or you're still in high school, or?
Just graduated. I used some of the money from savings of my graduation ceremony and then working to buy my first one. Bought the first one would have been August of 2009. So that'd been the first one, and I graduated in May. Went to college here in Des Moines in September 2009. And then over the next year and a half, I did 2 more deals. And
that was around the market crash too.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I remember that very vividly still. It's interesting because I still remember those times vividly now. And I'll tell you what, perspective-wise, looking back to the family adds up. You put a guy like me now in a world like that again today, and man, I will
buy everything.
You'll eat it up, huh?
Oh, it's going to be
a buffet in front of you.
It'll be a fun time. But again, it's just perspective. It's always 2020. But anyway, bought my next 2. I bought a duplex and a 6-plex.
And this is all by yourself still?
Those 2 are by myself. First one, Dad did co-sign the house with me, but those were by myself. Convinced a couple owners to sell me on contract. And it was funny. I remember the 6-plex. I was 19, 20 years old, and I couldn't even drink yet, and I was buying a 6-plex to rent out. All the tenants were older than me by about 20 years. So that was fun.
And again, this is all, you're getting all this mentorship from your family, essentially?
Yeah, from
Or-
the family, but I was very clear on this is something we'll go into in a little bit here. But I was very clear on I wanted to do it all by myself.
And how are you like figuring these things out? Like, how are you learning how to do this?
Part of it was through the classes and books I had read, and then the other part of it was just making a lot. And this is I can't go into all of it because I don't know all of them, but just making a lot of fucking mistakes.
Okay.
The one thing that I will say is that I'm very disciplined in a few things, and I'm very religious about a few things. So I'm going to tie this back for a reason here, is that the reason I'd found these 2 deals that I could buy on contract was because I had been diligent and disciplined about I did not miss an investor meetup group. There were a couple investor meetup groups in our market in Des Moines at that time, and I went to all of them religiously. I did not, and they were like church. I did not miss them. And this is important, I think, because as we mentioned, we met, networking, that's how we met. And to this day, some people have asked me, like, how have you built up this huge network of people across the state, actually, even across the U.S. anymore and across the region and Midwest, but even, the U.S. and as a nation. And I am diligent about networking and putting myself in the right rooms and the right spots.
And do you have any like tips or advice of like how to network, like advice on how to do that?
Do it. Just do it.
Is there anything specific that you do?
There's a couple things I can give some tips and tricks on that, I guess. But at the end of the day, like I'm a natural actually by my case. I used to be an introvert. I've become an extrovert over the years. So it's putting myself in situations where it was like I was the quiet one in the back and the weird one. And then slowly over time, it was like, hey, I kind of like you. You seem like a cool guy. Let's start hanging out in the back room together. And then like there's 2 of us talking in the back. Now there's a 3rd person. Now there's a 4th. So like just go find the other misfit geeks in the room. Just find 2 people. Like people look at these things too. Like they got those rooms. They have to know everybody in the room. Like you don't need to know everybody in the room. You just need to know one person. And it's actually better if you don't go with someone else because then you're going to naturally lean on them to be that person. Like that's what I would encourage somebody to do. If you're going to go out and network, go to a networking group where you don't know anybody. Because if you go with a friend, you're going to always naturally lean on that friend. That's going to keep you barricaded. You're better off to go to these groups by yourself and then just go find one person that you can connect with in that place. That's it, just one person. And then when you go back next time, you're going to find that same person, say hi to them again, but then just go find one more person that second time. And you just keep doing that over and over again. And again, make it religious. And you keep doing that over and over again. And when you go to enough of these networking groups, you're going to find some people go to all of them, some go to none of them, some go to them once in a while. But if you keep doing this over and over again, it's amazing how vast your network can get really quickly. And then again, that's how I built my 2nd and 3rd properties was like, hey, I want to buy properties, and someone sold me some duplex and a 6-plex on contract. And then I was able to, through some savings and some talking to people and whatever it was, get them to finance me with essentially no money down. Or very little money down at that point in time, which looking back, I don't actually encourage that. The no money down, everybody wants to do it because they have no money. I actually encourage people to use their own money more often than not nowadays. I don't encourage you to do as I did, but yeah, that's I guess what I would say there. And I can give even more examples as it's gone on longer and longer, how that's paid off. Even as I moved into commercial real estate as a broker, this is fast forwarding a little bit here. I remember it was 5-6 years ago, I walked into a room full of commercial real estate owners, agents, brokers, lenders, etc., by myself, knowing nobody in that room, and it was so scary. If you saw me in that same room today, I can say hi to everybody in that room. They all know me, shaking hands. I can work that room like a freaking, I don't even call it, work it like anything, like a freaking call girl on the street or something. I don't know. But I can just work that room because I know everybody. Because, again, I just built up that same skill set over time. And be willing to look like an idiot and feel like an idiot, and that's just part of how it works. And don't get me wrong, I still once in a while will go to a networking group by myself and feel like an idiot. Like those emotions don't leave you; you just get stronger.
You just learn how to handle it better.
Yeah, exactly. So
then, like, before you get into the commercial stuff, though, like, so you bought a 300 square foot house, you bought a duplex, you bought a 6-plex. You were still in your early 20s.
At that point, I was still 20, yeah.
You were still 20. So you had 9 doors by the time you were 20 years old.
Yeah.
So then, like, what's happening in your world when you get to that level? Did you continue to buy? Like,
Well, that's where it starts getting interesting, actually. So this is all, again, perspective-wise. I'm going to college. By this time, I'm in my second year of college. In my college, I went year-round to get done in 3 years. I specifically chose that college because it was a year-round school to get done in 3 years. So I don't actually have a senior. I had 3 years. So I was about a year and a half in. At this point, I was pretty much all online. And I was doing all online. I was doing, my management, this stuff, too. This is where the story gets interesting, and this is something I've learned more and more years, that you can't really teach this, but it's a hard skill. I've done a couple of good things right over the years and a lot of things wrong. What happened is this whole time, again, I'm networking all over. And at that time, then it came to where I owned 9 units, a 6-plex duplex in this house. And I found this little house that was foreclosure that I was going to buy and fix up. And I made an offer, $31,000 cash. And the ARV, after repair value, was $65,000 at the time. It's on Southeast 1st Street, 1603, little Italy there. You can see exactly where it's at. Little red brick house I drive by once in a while. And I've got pretty fond memories of that one because that was a deal I remember. I made an offer. And a couple things about the house I can think about as I reflect on it was, I think they were asking $50,000 for the house, and I offered them $31,000 for it. And the agent said they'll never take that, and I said give it a shot. Made a low ball offer, which that nowadays wouldn't work as well. Back then it was still and this is 2010, 11. This is still some stuff on the market. Yeah. And I also made the offer for cash, and he goes, "Do you have the cash figured out?" Yeah, I said nope. Gonna do a little bit of jump and figure it out. And what was cool about this is where it starts getting really interesting in the story, is what I did then is I actually, and this is going to get me in trouble, actually, a lot of hot water here. You'll understand why in a second. What I figured out is, without even realizing it, was it's a lot easier to ask a billionaire for $1 million than to ask a millionaire for $1 million. So what I said was, I need $30,000 to buy this house and a couple thousand of renovation rehab. Instead of me going to my cousins and aunts and uncles and parents and all these people to ask for money, who can I find that's already doing business that has a lot of money? And I was like, I know a couple of commercial brokers who do apartment sales. I'm going to call up them and see if they want to invest with me in this little house. And the commercial broker I'm thinking of, he said, no, I won't invest with you, but I know a guy who might. And the guy who might, at that time, owned about 2,000 apartment units free and clear.
Wow.
And I knew who the guy kind of was, but I didn't know really much about him. And I met him, I'll never forget, I met him for lunch, and I had a whole proposal put together. It was like 15 pages, like I'm going to buy this little house, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and I slide it across, and I'm like, and I'd like to have $31,000 if you're okay with it. And he looked at it, and he's like, okay, when do you need it by? I said, well, like in 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. He goes, okay, well, if you need it tomorrow, I'll get it tomorrow. And at that time, I left it, and I was like so excited. I'm like, oh my God, this guy just gave me $30,000, and I can't believe it. And I'm 21 years old, and he funded me. And if this goes well, he might give me more money, and this could be great. Fast forward, we end up doing within the next give or take 18, 24 months, a little over $3 million in cash between us two as transactions.
That's around the time I think I met you.
Yeah, that's when things started getting really interesting. Yeah. But again, what I had learned from that moment, and I'd done it by accident, but what I learned from that moment was you have to think bigger. So I had this conversation with someone as well, even just in the last few weeks. Someone said, well, I want to go out and do some more apartment deals or more syndication deals. And I said, well, think bigger. And they were like, well, none of our friends have $100,000 in the bank. I said, stop asking your friends for $100,000. Go ask that business owner for $1 million. They make deals all day long. They want to get their money to work. Don't go ask someone, your friends, to do this. Go think bigger, and be willing to. And this goes back to the failing adds up a little bit. Be willing to fail a little bit.
Be willing to get no's too, right?
Yeah, and they're going to tell you no's, and you're going to have to work a little bit to get into that room. But that's where you have to go. You got to go where the guys. You got to change the environment, change the room you're in.
Why do you think he said yes to you though?
First off, for looking back on it, it's a drop in the bucket for amount of money he has. This gentleman at that time, without going on all the details of it, but had about $15 million of cash just sitting on the side that he could just play with. So $31,000 and $15 million in cash is a fairly small amount of money, perspective wise. But I think what it was he saw that I had experience. I already done some deals by myself with my own money. It was first thing. I had some grit in me. I also had a plan, education. I didn't just come to him with like, hey, I want to buy this house, and hey, man, how you doing? You know, whatever. Like, I was, again, back to my skills my dad taught me. I was wearing business clothes. I was dressed up. I had a polo on. I had jeans on or whatever. I had slacks, think of what it was, you know, and I'd come to him with a proposal and a plan of what I was going to do. Now, looking back on this here as well, this is something important to add to our story here. The entire time I was doing these deals, I was trying to go to bankers and convince bankers to give me millions of dollars to buy apartment complexes and house because I saw there were deals out in the market happening. And I was like, I want to buy these deals. And I remember walking into one bank specifically. I'll even say the bank, and I'll even say who it is. It was Bankers Trust, right off University Avenue and 50th Street, West Des Moines, right next to our office now. Yep. And I'm going to say her name because I still give her a lot of credit. Luann Gafford. I think she's since retired. Luann Gafford. I walked in there. I was 19 years old, and I said, I want to buy commercial properties. And to give her, and that's the reason, she gave me the time of day. I got laughed out of so many banks that I'd walk into banks literally in suit and tie and say, I want to borrow money from you to do deals. And they'd say, do you have any income? Nope. Do you have any assets? Nope. And this was in 08, 09, not realizing it back then. These guys were already frozen, not giving money to their best borrowers, much less a 19-year-old kid. So back to failing adds up. And so I'd walk into these meetings, and I remember Luann, I'll never forget, she gave me the time of day, and she called in one of her executives, and we sat down and talked about lending, and basically kind of told me, without saying it so bluntly, we can't help you. You're 19. You have no money. But that failing, again, this goes back to the failing adds up. By going in all these banks, I was preparing myself to actually present to myself an individual. I approached him the same way I would approach any bank. I was dressed up. I had a plan. I had a property. Here's my financial, here's my budget, here's my rehab cost, here's everything I was going to do. Now, the bank said no because the bank had their policies and procedures and we can't blah, 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 blah. But it was the same process. And also what that's done for me over the years is by being very unbankable, I've had to learn how the banking system works. So most of the time now, I can tell a banker how to do his job better than he can. And I can also tell an appraiser how to do his job better than he can. Not because I'm better, just because I have failed so many times at getting an appraisal correctly done, or failed so many times at getting money, where I'm like, okay, you're going to analyze this deal, and you're going to analyze it X, Y, and Z. Why? Because of 1, 2, 3 equals X, Y, Z, and here's why we're going to do this, because this is going to equal that over there, we're going to do this over there, and this is going to create this over there.
Can I point out a few things?
Yeah.
Because here's a lot of the things that behind the scenes, I think, like, because, you know, they're like just kind of to provide the perspective from listening to you. Because there's, you know, there's going to be that like 19-year-old that's going to start asking for money. You were different. You were already executing.
Oh, yeah.
Right. You already had 9 doors. You were analyzing deals when you were 16 years old. You were studying, doing the things. You were pushing down not having girlfriends and not going out and partying. You were doing all these things that had him say yes, right? Like he saw that, because I see this a lot with the younger generation right now. They're like, I want this, this, and that. I'm like, what time do you wake up? Like, what are you studying? Like, what are you pouring into yourself?
Sure.
That makes you not average.
Oh, so
right. So you stood out to him for a reason. He didn't just be like, "Here's 31 grand." Like you were like, you were prepared, and you had been studying deals since you were 16. Oh, so, and that 16-year-olds don't do that.
Well, right? And okay, perspective here as well. I want to give some context to all this time in my life before I met this investor. This is in college, freshman year, sophomore years of college, when everybody's having the fun, right? Perspective-wise, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment by myself. I had a folding table as a table and 2 chairs. I had a old couch that had been left there and a bed. I had a 19-inch box TV that was a VCR and an old Xbox with video games. I had like 4 of them, I think. But I had I had one TV that was this big by this big by this big that I got when I was 15 years old. I brought to college with me from when I'd gotten, I was like 14 years old, whatever, for a Christmas present. I had basically no TV, though. I had very minimal Xbox, like 3 games. I had some movies, and I had a laptop. So, and again, I was in online school for the most part my sophomore year. So I'd get all my homework done in a matter of like 8 hours a week. So then realized that I now had, 24 hours a week, 24 hours a day times 6-7 days. Take away sleeping, take away my homework. I was stuck with 100 hours a week to sit there and do nothing but watch TV. My boring part, I had no money. I was broke. So I got into one skill set I got into, and this ties back to around, is one skill set I got into. I would work a lot during the weekends. I worked a lot Friday nights, Saturdays, and Sundays. Because during the week, I'd keep myself busy with other work, with doing tours of properties and with homework or whatever it may be, or I'd read books. I read a ton of books. I'd go to the library. By the way, everybody forgets the library. Like, holy shit, you don't need to buy these books. You know, there's a lot of books at the library you can go read. Like, I used to have library memberships to all the libraries. Just so you know, I used to walk around and read books from the library too. And not just business books. I'd also read fun books because those fun books expanded my horizon, my viewpoints. But we'll go into that another time.
Yeah, I actually used to close out the library back in the day.
Yeah.
So
yeah. See, but what I used to do, and I remember this actually still, and this to this day you'll see it probably even tonight to an extent. I remember this vividly. In college, I was so broke I couldn't afford anything. For months on end, I usually lived off ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly, and that was kind of it was literally peanut butter jelly and ramen noodles, water, and Black Label Scotch from Johnny Walker. That's actually a fun story.
Black Label Scotch with your ramen noodles.
Right, yeah, I know, right? Had to drown the sorrows out somehow. Well, my dad always told me, Jared, you deserve the best. If you're gonna drink alcohol, drink the best. Means you're gonna less chance to get drunk on it, and then less chance to have a hangover. So I always drank Black Label. So that's what I splurged on was my Black Label Scotch, and then I would have ramen noodles and peanut butter and jelly for my food for months. But Friday nights, what I would do is I'd be bored because my friends are all out partying. I couldn't afford it. I had no girlfriend. So I would just pull up the MLS and I would just look at deals for like 3 hours. It got to the point where, and I think you can do it now still too, but at that point in time, and I think I could still probably do it now, it got to the point where I'd look at a house and I'd analyze the deal, look at pictures, analyze the deal, analyze the deal, analyze the deal.
You already knew what you were going to offer.
And to the point where, it got to the point where I could even just look at a house and go yes or no within 2 seconds. I didn't need to do the ARV and then my repair value and my closing cost and then my MAO, maximum allowable offer, is this. Like, got to the point where just like yes or no. I mean, I could just look at the deal and go, I could just click, yes, no. Yep, that's the deal. This is the deal we're going to look at here. So I'd look at hundreds of houses at night, Friday nights. I'd work from like 4 until midnight most times because that's when I just would want to work. And to this day, because I instilled that habit, you'll see a lot of times Friday afternoons, I won't work a Friday for some reason. I'll slack off till 3 or 4 o'clock, and then 4 or 5 o'clock hits, and I get like rejuvenated.
You start working,
and I work Friday nights. Like, you'd be surprised how even still to this day I still work so many Friday nights. And there's something about working a Friday night that I sadistically get off on.
Do you think it's because you know everyone is not working? Like, it gives you that advantage?
Yeah, it does. And statistically speaking, I'm a little statistical in this. Like, it does I get a little bit of a high off working Friday nights when I know everybody else is partying. And I also know I go into Saturday, Sunday feeling a lot better when I know I've got all my shit done on Friday night. I can actually, I deserve to take off. Now, anymore, I work Friday nights and I work half-day Saturdays. And then I still kind of work Sunday nights anyway, so I don't really still take off. But those were things I was doing in the background, too, to kind of give perspective and context. So when I did find this investor, I had spent literally a year and a half analyzing deals all my nights and weekends. I would spend, I would go to all the networking events. I was trying to talk to banks all these times. I was reading books. And this part's actually kind of interesting, too, is that I actually spent a lot of this time alone, too, which is actually important to the story because entrepreneurship can be a very lonely field. You got lucky. You had Trish and some people with you as well, like help, but like it can be a very lonely world.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're that young. And this actually some stories I can tie into that as well. It's also a mistake I made. But I also had to learn a lot about myself in that time frame. So there was a lot of nights and weekends where you're just journaling. And I was just thinking about the life I wanted to create, the life I wanted to live, and just kind of visualizing that. And I'd spend there were weekends I went and talk to a soul from Thursday afternoon when school was done till Monday morning. I'd spend 3 days not to say a word to anybody. Literally, I would be in my apartment, and I would just literally read, watch a little Netflix, and study deals, and that's all I would do. I wouldn't talk to anybody for 3 days.
Man,
not a single word.
Man, and so that's the stuff people don't see, right? And so, like, I'm so glad you went that deep and that detailed, because people just see instant gratification, like, oh, you know, he owns a ton of real estate now and this and that. They didn't hear all this stuff, which is cool. So let's go back to the story here. So, because I know there's a lot of meat on this. So you acquired over $3 million worth of real estate by the time you got to be 24, right? It sounds like.
Yep.
Do you still own that real estate? What happened?
Oh, we're still getting into some of the fun stories here. We haven't even gotten into some of the real fun. This is when this fan was still spinning before the shit had hit the fan. So the blessing and the curse. So I done a lot of things right to find this investor, this gentleman, and he put a lot of faith in me. And I completely, admittedly, unequivocally fucked up that trust. To my own detriment. What happened is I did a couple of deals right with him, and 3 or 4 deals went really, really well. The problem with that is those deals went really well, and he got to the point where he trusted me to do deals, to the point where I could just call him, and within 24 hours, I could have $250,000 in my account. Hey, I'm doing a deal. I got a house. I want to buy it. When are we closing? Next week. Okay, I'll wire the money tomorrow, and we'll do the paperwork after we close. And so at 21 years old, when you can literally make a phone call and raise $250,000 in one phone call, it gets a little bit, it gets an ego boost. It gets a little bit of arrogant, a little bit to your head, to the point where it was a power I didn't respect. Yeah. It's a power that I've learned to respect now because I have felt the repercussions of that power in a very negative way, which we're going to go in a second here. But it was a power base that I don't assume. And this is also why I have, over my years, I have actually very little respect for businesses and people that scale quickly. Because most of the time, people who scale quickly as a business owner, as a person, not always, but generally speaking, they don't require the respect for that power. Now, in a rare instance, you'll find someone, and I'm an example, like an Alex Hormozy, who's on YouTube, like, once in a while, you'll have someone who has that perspective, who has that respect for that power, and they stay with it. Once in a while. But I'll tell you right now, more often than not, people do not have respect for the power that they are given when they build something quickly. And so you'll see this, and you'll see this all the time throughout any businesses. Anytime you've had a business scale quickly, and by quickly I mean in less than 7 years, that really just like moonshot kind of level, you're always like, here comes a big fall. You can just see it, and I know because I've experienced it. So anyway, I met this investor. The first 4 or 5 deals go really right, and then all of a sudden it starts becoming. I can start calling for money, and I start seeing this power, and it started building up this house of cards. Basically, what happened is, and I started buying up a lot of deals. And at that point in time, I was about 23, 24. We just kind of started meeting there. I did do the math on it one time. I don't remember exact numbers on it, but it was something like between 18 and 24. In that 6-7 year period, I did like 60 to 70 transactions. And I don't remember. Don't ask me anything more than that because I can't tell you. At that point, we were moving so fast. We were buying a house every month. I don't know what we were selling, what we were buying. I don't know always where they were.
You're doing most of this on your own? Or?
My brother had joined me after college. He had graduated. My brother joined me. I had built from 9, and I had this house. That was my 10th one. When I hit about 21 units, my brother joined me. And that would have been about a year and a half after after I had met this investor.
And at some point in this, you got your real estate license too, I'm assuming?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, I was always just an owner.
Got it.
And my brother did a couple of deals on his own with the same investor. And then I had mine, I think it was like 19 or 21 doors, something like that, somewhere around there. He had his couple of duplexes, and we all had the same investor. And we decided we're going to partner up as brothers and do this together. And then we scaled from, that was about 21, 22. And then we scaled from 21, 25 units, whatever the hell it was, to like something like, I'm going to screw it up because I just don't remember, honestly. Something like 72 or more units spread over like 25 or 30 properties. I don't know. It was houses, duplexes, small apartments. I don't remember because it was just such a whirlwind of a couple of years. All I know was sure felt fun. And it sure felt like we were like walking on air, like we were the kings of the universe.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, it comes crashing down hard. It comes down crashing down quick. And what happened is, when we were about 24, around the time I met you, actually, I met you, I think, about a few months after this all happened. Actually, you don't even know some of the story that was happening. Well, I told you some of it, actually, now. We met, I believe, in, I want to say, December or February of 2014, 2015, around the time, somewhere around
Sounds
there.
about right.
You were joining KW at that time, or
I was. Had been a year out of engineering and had gotten my real.
Would have been
estate
October, November of 2014 when we met, I think, and I know why, because what had happened is we'd been turning and burning all these times, and then it was actually as I think back, I remember these dates now. It was about August, September of 2014. My business partner, my investor, he'd been doing a lot of loans, not just us, but other people. And he had a lot of moving parts in his business going. He had scaled from an individual to a full-fledged lending business, almost like a small bank. And he hired a guy to help him run this operation. And the gentleman, to his credit, he actually taught me a lot about business. But the first thing he did is he walked in and said, "We're making no more loans. We're done." And so it was a faucet of just this massive water coming out that was all this money that just dried up overnight. And every flip, every house we did, we had deals that were in escrow that were going to close that they were like, "Yeah, we're not giving you money for that." Like, "Well, we're closing in 3 days." "Yeah, you're not getting money for that. Figure it out." And it was like, "What? We're supposed to close in 3 days. Like, this money's supposed to happen. We're going to lose earnest money." "Well, figure it out." And it was like, oh, crap, scramble moment. And again, looking back, I don't blame, but in that moment when you go from all of this money is just free flow magnet call to it's gone in a day, all these deals start drying up real quick. And the machine only worked when the machine was turning. When the machine stopped turning, that house cards falls really quickly, which, by the way, we're going to have that same happen pretty close in our market now with some especially multifamily guys. This is a future pace, but I see these wheels turning in the same manner. There's some hurt coming. But anyway, that comes crashing down and basically said, "I want all my notes paid back in the next 3 months." And at that time, it was $3 million or so, give or take, of real estate. And I had done some bad deals because we got out of hand, and some of the interest was starting to eat up. And the real estate value was about $2 million at that time. So 24 years old and $1 million in debt that I did not have.
Oh, wow.
And then met this guy, and he wanted me to buy his house on 54th Street and fix it and flip it. And I was in the backyard trying to talk my investor into lending on this property, which he said he would not do because he had shut off the loans.
And it's weird because, like, I had just got my license. I came across this deal that was a big fixer-upper, and it was, like, a big one, right? And I was used to buying, like, small deals. And
big in the sense of price?
Price and size.
Okay.
Like, it was also, like, more in of a luxurious neighborhood. And they had, like, a luxury product that they were putting out. And I just like, well, this deal's too big for me, and I haven't really entered that luxury realm. And I was like, these guys, I seen their finished product and it's awesome, and I'm like, this fits their realm, and I bring it to him, and I didn't know none of that was happening behind the scenes. I was just like, these guys are buying deals left and right.
Yep. And this goes back again too. This goes back to the failing adds up, but also back to the story. What happened is that investor said no to that deal, so I did what I was good at. I called the commercial broker up. This is why I'm getting myself in trouble. Called the commercial broker I know and said, "I'm doing this deal. Who do you know that will fund me on a deal?" And she said, "Call this person up." And I called up him, and sure enough, he funded me the deal, and it all went fine. And again, that gentleman is one of my mentors. He's since passed away, and I really miss him a lot. He was a great mentor to me. In fact, he gave me the money for that house on a handshake. Oh, wow. He told me it wasn't worth his time to actually file it, and that was, I think, a $350,000 house we did. And I remember him telling me, "Oh, it's not worth me even. Here's a check. Just pay back whenever you want." And I was like, damn. But again, thinking bigger, this guy had made so much millions of dollars that he just didn't think in hundreds of thousands. He thought in tens of millions, which is, again, that's actually a case and theme point I want anybody to listen to. Like, if you want to think bigger, you got to think a little bigger too. Like, don't think you also cause more failure that way, but failure adds up. That's what I've heard, at least.
Yes.
Wonder where.
I know, right? So anyway, so we do this house. Long story really short. The investor called all of our notes due. We were bankrupt, basically. And we spent about 2 or 3 years building out of that and negotiating with him and trying to make the deals work and get some money back into him and stuff. Long story really short, didn't end up working out. We had to give a lot of the properties back. And we never declared bankruptcy, but we basically had to threaten bankruptcy because we were at the end of our wits' end. And this time, I'd become an agent. That's when I became an agent. It was right at the time we did that house. Because I was like, we can't keep flipping houses because our money had dried up. So I need to find another way to make money that I can't flip in houses. Well, these agents need to make a lot of money, those greedy agents. And they all suck anyway, so I'm going to go be an agent. Became an agent, did a couple of transactions residentially wise, thought to myself, you guys are way too overworked, way too underpaid. And I always knew I had done houses as a way to get to commercial. And so I was like, well, again, thinking bigger, like I might as well just go do commercial. So I started doing commercial right off the bat. Now, what I didn't realize about commercial is that takes like 3 to 5 years to start paying out.
I remember when I first approached you about commercial, you're like, you're not going to make money for 5 years. Right?
Yeah.
Or you tell that, and I've heard that, like, the residential agents have a 9 out of 10 failure rate.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard in commercial it's like 98%.
It's
like,
massive, yeah.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
Just because you don't make money for like 3 to 5 years. Instead of residential, if you actually like put your head down and get to work, you can make money in 6 to 18
Because with
months.
commercial, the deals take so much longer, like each one.
They take so much longer, but you're also you're trying to encroach on an entrenched market. A lot of these agents and owners have known each other for years, and you're trying to work your way. And it's not like these owners don't work with anybody. These guys have made millions of dollars. They don't give their business to anybody. You've got to really earn their trust, earn their business to get in it. You don't just come out one day and sell the Taj Mahal. I mean, you might get lucky. If you're really lucky, you might get 1 or 2 there, but 98% of the time, you're going to fail and you're going to have a lot of problems before you ever get into commercial. All things I've learned, since the fact.
Yeah.
So then you got your commercial license. So what year was that?
That would have been 2015.
You were 25, 26?
At that point, I was 24, turning 25.
24, okay.
Yep.
Okay. So 2015, so that's about 8 years ago,
Mhm.
right?
Yep, 8 years ago, yep.
So then, like, what's happened in that 8-year period? Like, what have you learned about yourself and your business? Because I do remember, like, one of the, again, I kind of started it off, one of the biggest reasons I respect you is your work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I still go into, we have our own team office, but when I go into the brokerage office, it's like you and like 3 other people.
Yeah, every time.
Right? And I remember still when you first started, you were there that's one of the things I've always known about you. You always show up whether you want to or you don't.
Oh, it's just discipline. I mean, it's the same reason I've been in the gym. I spend at least 5 to 6 days a week in the gym, and I have since I was 13 years old. And people ask me again why, and I'm like, for me, it's just a lifestyle habit that I don't understand why you wouldn't ever do that. And it's just, again, maybe it's just because I saw it with my parents. The discipline, just go to work, go to work, go to work, go to work. One thing I will say I've learned, and this is where I get on my high horse a lot. What has changed from 2015 to 2023 now when we're having this podcast, the biggest thing is I've shifted my mindset on hard work, to be quite honest. From 2009 to 2015, those 6 years, I was working hard, very hard. And we're talking 6-7 days a week. We're talking 12-hour days. We're talking a lot of time spent into this. And again, I was making no money because all the money was going to pay back this investor and other people. And I actually don't like the term "just go work hard," because, and I'm gonna say this as a compliment, but there are a lot of Mexican Latinos that will outwork my ass. You guys fucking work hard, and you know what? And all credit to that. But you know what? Working hard is only going to get you so far. It will open doors. There is no doubt. It will open doors for you. But I can tell you right now, one thing I've learned is that when you're an entrepreneur, you make money with your mind, not with your work ethic. Mm-hmm. And what's changed a lot for me, what really has changed the most from the last 8 years, has been the ability to work smart and hard at the exact same time. Not just work hard, but work hard on the right things. And that was through coaching and mentorships. People tell me like, hey, don't just go out and dig a hole to dig a hole. We're going to dig a hole that has some oil beneath it. Like that's, let's figure out like why we're doing this, and let's figure out what we can be intentional. The word we use in Keller sometimes is be intentional, right?
Yeah.
And
So
it was
what
being
are
intentional.
So what are those things that you're intentional with?
Everybody's different. At the end of the day, everybody's gonna have a different thing, and it's all going to vary based upon what business you are in, and what your career is, what you're working on. So it's always gonna vary. For me, what I would say is, if I had to be really clear on what I've gotten really intentional about, and this is something I learned from Mentor again. That same time, I was transitioning. There's a couple of things I guess I can say. There's so many. It's hard to. We could spend hours talking about it. Things I was intentional about was one. From 18 to 24, I was Superman, or me and my brother were both Superman. We wanted to do it all ourselves. And I wanted to I always said I want to own 100. I want to own 100 units or 400 units. I want to do it all by myself. And now I own 2 deals, 3 deals, whatever it is, and it has nothing to do with me. I'm actually a minority owner in most of those deals. And I'm like, my net worth's actually gone up a lot more. So I'm more intentional about actually creating partnerships and teamwork. I have like since thrown out that whole idea of like do it all yourself. Like,
and that's like a common thing we've been hearing is like letting loose of the control. Like,
it's a team. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Like, I mean, like there's no. It's a cliche, but no one's a self-made person. Self-made. Now, I agree to disagree. You can be self-made up to a certain point. You can be self-made up to a millionaire, maybe even a decamillionaire. But you get to a certain point beyond that, and you ain't reaching success without someone else's help, or someone else to build that. I mean, like this goes back to hard work is not leverageable. Like, I can leverage someone else's hard work, but I can't leverage my hard work because there's only so many hours in the day. And that's been a big pivotal shift for me. And this is another thing I could say I got more intentional about, which this is almost a whole other podcast by itself, is I've learned to create and treat businesses like businesses and investments like investments. And too many people make a perversion of that, and it's to their own detriment. And what I mean by that is, I say this actually all the time. It's one of the things I say a lot is, we look to the Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant. There's the E, S, the B, I. Employee, self-employed, business owner, investor. And everybody wants to be, generally speaking, the business owner or the investor, which, by the way, is totally false. You can make a ton of money still be in any of those 4 quadrants if you know how to do shit right.
Yeah, you're leveraging.
But you could be an employee capacity and still make a ton of money as an investor. I mean, like Bob Iger, CEO of Disney, is an employee. He's making millions of dollars a year. Guess what? I could say that he, as an employee, is making more money than some of these business owners I know that have their businesses. So, there's no one right way to do this.
I even have teammates on my operational side that have higher net worths than some of the people on the sale because they're making their money and investing it.
Exactly. So, like, you can be an E and S and play the I game. But what I mean by this, I can say, is that there's investments and there's businesses. Investments, and this is why I come back to as well, what do investments really do? Investments create cash flow. Mm-hmm. Businesses create cash. Play the game separately. So if I'm going to flip this house, understand my goal is to flip this house is to create cash. If I'm going to grow this business, it's to create business income. It's not to create cash flow. It's to create income. Let's just be really clear on this. I also hate the idea of net worth because then the net worth, in my opinion, all it means is the ability to borrow to create cash. Like Elon Musk is like, yeah, he's a $100 billion guy until Tesla stock goes down by 40%. And then all of a sudden he's going from $100 billion to $40 billion in one day. And all of a sudden his ability to borrow against that net worth means absolutely zero. So net worth means nothing. At the end of the day, all business, anything breaks down to cash and cash flow. And when I got intentional about treating those separately and looking at them in a smart way, like, okay, what is my cash and what is my cash flow and how am I treating them separately? All of my investments are through partnerships, and I'm investing for cash flow, and I have certain metrics I look at when I invest for my cash flow, my real estate, my investments. My brokerage, my team is my business, and I treat that like a business. And that's 2 different things. So I've gotten more intentional and working smarter on both of those different avenues for growth. Does that make sense? Maybe?
So let's talk a little bit about that topic, though,
okay.
about creating your team. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of take us on the Denver of that?
At the end of the day, it's just one of the facts of I'm still, this goes back maybe to some of those sleepless nights or those alone times in college. But at the end of the day, like, there is literally no fun or no joy in doing this thing called life by yourself. Like, you need to have a wife and kids and family, and even then, like, it's fun. But then, like, why would you go to work every day? Like, your coworkers are usually sometimes your best friends, right? That's how, everybody can say their coworkers are usually their friends. Well, when you're a solo agent or you're a solo entrepreneur, like, where's the fun in that? Like, I actually had the opportunity to climb and summit Mount Kilimanjaro this past year. And I said to everybody, I said, everybody tells you that, they make all these analogies of, like, you climb the mountain for the view and you reach the pinnacle of success and all this other shit. Yeah, it's bullshit. All that. No. When you ever actually, and this is real life, I take this as a metaphor, but it's real life. Whenever you actually get to the top of that mountain, guess what that means? Shit, I spent 7 days or 6, I spent a lot of struggle getting up here. I'm probably miserable right now because on top of Mount Kilimanjaro, I was not feeling good, by the way. Like, your altitude is kicking in, you're tired, you're exhausted, and then you gotta go back down. So you're like, fuck this. And you're at the top of this mountain and you have this great view. You're like, wow, what a view. And you're like, ooh, I could have gotten in a helicopter and got the same damn view for a lot easier, right? So you're like, I relay that a lot to, like, the business world, right? And people are like, oh, I'm climbing the mountain for success. And you're like, man, the hike up really wasn't that much fun. The summit really wasn't that much fun. I felt like shit. I could have gotten the same results probably for a lot faster. Now, here's where it got fun. The day after we summited Mount Kilimanjaro, and you get 12 people that all just accomplished this big goal together, and we're all drinking banana beer, and we're celebrating, and we're taking our first shower in like 9 days, and we're all hugging and crying together. That was where the fun came into it. So
that's a powerful message right there.
So, like, I'm telling you right now, like, when everybody thinks like this whole like idea of like the climbing the mountain of success is fun, like, no, it's not.
Not without other people to be on that journey with.
Yeah, there's nothing fun about it at all, and there's nothing fun about even the success at the top.
I like a quote from J. Cole. J. Cole's is my favorite rapper of all time, but I won't quote it exactly how he said it because he said some words in there that I can't say. But essentially, he just basically said, like, what's the point of being in first class if I can't bring my homies with me?
Yep, exactly. I mean, that's why we see all these people that have their entourage with them, their whatever it is. I didn't want entourage who's going to be, moochers kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've always wanted to build a team. And there's also a whole philosophical reason behind that where, like, I can only help. I do about, on average, like 12, 15 deals a year with my clients. I can help 12, 15 people become millionaires through real estate, apartment investing. I do mostly apartments in the state of Iowa. If I have a team of 10 agents, they all help 15 people. We can help 150 people become millionaires. So there's a whole philosophical concept behind how you want to build a team to help more people achieve wealth.
Did you have like some sort of shift or again like another light bulb moment where you're like, I should create a team?
Not
or was it go back to like the journaling and stuff?
It was not really. There was just always that. I mean, there's the philosophical reason behind it. But at the end of the day, it's a really selfish reason. The reason I want to have a team is just like I want someone to do this with me.
Yeah.
There's just, I mean, there's like it's no fun. I mean, and you can hate him or love him. But one thing I love about like some Andrew Tate and some of his stuff, he talks about him and his like, who I do this with? My brother Tristan. And they all do it, like those 4 or 5 guys all do it together.
The top G's, huh?
Yeah, and they're all like, they all talk about it. They're like, what's fun about this business is that when you reach the top, you're doing it with your friends.
Right.
So like, I could go and like, there's a whole philosophy like, yeah, I can help more people, blah, blah, blah. No, at the end of the day, I just want to build a team because it's more fun to do it with 5 people than with
doing it by yourself.
Doing it by yourself. And that's because I've reached the point, back to the failing adds up, is that like I've spent some of those nights when I was in college by myself. I was doing all these deals by myself. One reason I'd also work a lot when I was younger as well is because I didn't have the girlfriend or the party life. So it was like, let's go work. And then I'd be like, let's go do these trips by myself, these cool trips by myself, or let's go spend the night by myself. And it's like, well, I don't know what else to do. I might as well just go work. So when you spend enough time in the shit, I guess is the way I say it, you just realize you're like, I don't want that for my life, I don't want to be, going back to an empty apartment by myself and having no furniture and no food. And it's still different now.
Or even having furniture and having food, but not being able to, share that furniture and share those experiences with someone else.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like I say this a lot here as well, but like, back to Kilimanjaro here, and I actually had a conversation with our team leader and some of the people. I said, man, I went to Mount Kilimanjaro by myself. I had a group with me climb it. And then I did safari by myself for 4 days. And safari was amazing. You're talking lions and elephants and, cheetahs, all these cool things. And I'm turning next to me looking at my guide going, wow. I'm sharing with the guide who's seen this 100 million times before, right? No fun. And I came back from that trip from Kilimanjaro even going, man, what if in like 3 to 5 years I can do that same trip and I can make it a producing trip where my top 3 producers go with me with their wives, their kids, their families. That'd be fun. Let's do that. So that's where I come back. I know you do a lot of traveling with like Ryan and his wife, and you bring Trish as well. Like, that's the fun of building the team, because you've spent a lot of the failure as an entrepreneur when you're alone. And I know you understand this too. Like, you understand what's like before you had Ryan, you had the team. You're coming home at night, and yes, you had Trish, but you're like, man, it's a lonely fucking journey sometimes.
Yeah, you're putting in 80, 100-hour work weeks. Yeah, and you're like, this isn't worth the money. Yeah, like it's like, and I mean, not everybody has this path yet. Like the ones that in our ecosystem that I see like have the most fun. They're willing to like give a portion of that money to just be around other people that have similar values and mindsets that want to go down a very not exact journey, but like a similar journey and going in a similar direction, right? Because everybody still has different goals within the team. Yet it like makes it so much more fun, because like we could technically like I'm gonna do this by myself, and you're still gonna close 15 deals. Yeah, I could literally say right now, because I know myself and I know my discipline, I can do 75 deals by myself. Yep, like I've actually 80, and I say that because I did 80 by myself. I don't want to. Well, I don't care how much money that is. It's that aspect of like, one, we can all do it, like we can do 40 each. Yep. And go 50-50 on those 40, and that's going to be so much more fun and so much more like we're also helping each other, because what's cool is like the vision starts to also kind of shape around the talent depending on the direction, right? You kind of have a general vision, but the vision also starts to form like, hey, why don't we do this? And you're like, I didn't think of that. That still aligns, and heck yeah, we can make some money doing that, or invest in this deal, or get a little piece of that, or a little piece of that, or a little piece of this.
The biggest thing about that is, and this is where it takes some experience here, is that as long as those visions still create of, are we creating the cash or the cash flow, back to that earlier thing. But like to your point earlier, I remember again, so many more stories here, but like I have a side business in the Cayman Islands that we built some houses. I remember meeting my partner. I was still as vividly, his partner Craig. We're sitting here. We're in a place that's called the Sunset House. It's south side of 7 Mile Beach, Cayman Islands, and we're sitting there one night, and we're both dead broke. I mean, we're living on credit here, basically. Like, I'm staying at his house on a freaking bed, and he's renting it. And I remember we sat there, and the sun's setting, and it's me and him, and he orders a drink, and I order a drink, and we looked at me and said, "Well, we're both dead broke. It's all up from here. Cheers." And I saw him last month, 2 months ago now, and we were talking about it. We were almost kind of both getting emotional. We're like, remember when it was 7-8 years ago when we were both dead broke and we were cheersing to being dead broke? And man, look at where we're at now. Like, look at where we're, and like, there was a camaraderie that you have there with that team. And going through the failures, remember when you tripped up and we all kind of laughed, we all kind of helped you, kind of thing. I remember when we all made this stupid mistake here. I remember when we tried this one thing that didn't really work, but we thought it was going to be brilliant.
Remember the first 10 Failing Adds Up episodes where no one could hear anything?
Yeah, literally. No.
Yeah, like you just laugh all these things. Yeah. But that's the thing, is that like the whole point of success or failure, it's like the question, I guess it's the old saying, if a tree falls in the woods, does it make any noise, right? So here's the thing. The whole point of failure only matters if someone actually sees you fail. The whole point of success only matters if someone sees you have success. But if you do all those in a silo, what's it really matter?
Yeah. Dude, there's so many things that you said throughout this podcast that we need to like slice out. Like you said a lot of really cool things that you don't realize you're saying some really powerful things. So, but I am. So,
just think about this for a second. Like, let's say we are just talking simply about failure and success in a simple philosophical sense of it. And let's just say you spent your whole life as a failure. but literally you did it in the woods by yourself and no one saw you. Like, what's it really matter? Mm-hmm. What if you literally spent your entire life in success, but you did it with no one around you? Like, what's the point? Like, what if Henry David Thoreau, who wrote the one book, Leaves of Grass, he had this great philosophical concept about like what life is about and these things too. What if he went to that cabin and he hadn't shared any of the success and the stories he had? Mark Aurelius' Meditations over here on the table. What if he had all success, but he didn't share with anybody?
Yeah.
Like, success and failure by themselves mean absolutely nothing if we put them only in the silo of where they're at.
Yeah.
If we think about this, like the whole point of even podcast here is to share, to build a camaraderie, build a community, build a team. That's the whole point of life, is to build something that we can give and share to other people.
Damn,
so like, that's the whole point. Like, again, everybody wants to look at, like, talk about, this is beyond just failure and success here, but like everyone wants to look at just failure or success as one of the, and they don't happen in a silo. They don't happen in a box.
Yeah.
These are supposed to be the goods and the bads, and they're supposed to be shared with other people.
Yeah. I love your philosophy. It's very similar to even just our podcast, you know, about sharing and some of the things I believe as well. It's super cool.
Yeah.
So to kind of like, we're definitely gonna have to have you back.
I was
so
saying,
many.
we literally went from like the early years to like maybe up to when I was like 23, 24,
So,
and we kind of stopped from there. We didn't even talk about some of the failures from then on.
Yeah,
in the last 8 years.
We're gonna have to come back for sure and have you as a guest. So like, to kind of aim to wrap it up a little bit, like, two things. What's next? If you want to kind of encapsulate what's next for you in your life, in your world, in your team.
Sure.
And two, what are like one or two things that you would want to share with our followers out there in regards to your advice to them for?
Sure.
And they're all kinds of listeners, right? They're
Yep.
not just real estate. They're all
Yep.
not just entrepreneurs. Some are athletes. Some are, even some UFC fighters and stuff like that. Like, so just in general, like, what are just general tips of advice for life itself that you would have? So what's going on next in your world, and then those couple pieces of advice.
So I'll actually answer that with the same answer the whole way through, actually. I'll give you one answer, which actually will tell you the answer of my plan to the team. So one of my first mentors when I was 15, 16, he said something to me, and I've studied it over the years. He said, the average overnight success takes 15 years. And what I've studied now is that people tend to start having success right between year 5 and year 7 of any career they choose to do. And the reason why is that's right around that, you hit about that 10,000 hour of mastery mark, right? And so even in this podcast, we've talked about the first 7 years of my career, which is my first 10,000 hours towards mastery, and my mastery of failure is really probably what it was, because I failed a lot. So that's the first 7 years. So what kept me going through some of the bad times was the idea and the concept of 15 years to success, right? So I remember I said to a friend of mine one time, I was like, well, I can't stop now. He goes, well, why not? I said, well, I'm in year 8. He's like, what's that got to do with anything? I was like, oh man, it takes 15 years to success, and I'm only in year 8, so fuck it, I'm already halfway. Like, I mean, why stop? I mean, might as well just keep going, right? And ironically, we're hitting year 14 now for my investment career, and year 16 of my study in this business. So I'm starting to kind of have the rumblings, at least maybe, who knows, of that success. As I've studied businesses and philosophies in the world, what I would say is it takes 7 to 8 years to start having success. It takes 15 years to start creating massive success, and it's going to take 30 years to change the world. And you start looking at Google, go study Amazon, go study Apple, go study the internet, go study
Nike,
go study Bitcoin, by the way, go study AI, go study some of these things that could literally change our worlds, and start looking at what year they are. Are they in year 7? Are they in year 15? Or are they in year 30? 7 years to have success, 15 years to have mass success, overnight success, you'd almost call it, 30 years to change the world, right? So what I would say to anybody out there is that know where you're at in the cycle of success. Know where you are. Are you on year 3, going towards year 15? Do you have the discipline to hit 15 years, to hit 30 years? Again, depending on what you want to do. You might only say, I only want to hit 7 years and hit good success, and I'm good. Maybe I want to hit 15 years. Maybe I want to hit 30 years. All I know is for me, this ties back into the answer to your question, this may be a good mic drop ending point, is that I know I'm disciplined enough, and I know my goal wasn't 15 years. my goal was 30 years because I was looking for a change in the world, not just not just being success. I want to change the world. So my goal is 30 years, not just 15. So I got 15 more years left, and we'll see where that 15 years brings.
Dude, let's go.
So
mic drop. I love it, man. I had so much fun getting to know you from this perspective, and there's a lot of nuggets in there for our followers. And so, you up for coming back?
Yeah, just let me know whenever.
Love it, love it. All right, Antonio. So
we'll try to type next time. We spent the first 7 years of my mastery of failure. Maybe the next time we'll spend the next 8 years towards the overnight success portion of it, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
And then just call me back in 15 more years, so we'll see.
See where you're at.
Change the world part.
That 30-year change the world part happens.
Hey, I like that.
Yeah, no. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure you do. Give us our feedback. Comment down below. Let us know if there's any other topics or anything that you want Jared to go more in depth into the next time we have him here on the episode.
Yeah.
And as always, thank you so much for all the support. We're so excited for some of our up and coming guests. I can't say who we're gonna have in here, but we have some people that are changing the world. We have some people in some very cool spaces. Like again, that's our goal, is we're making sure that we're trying to reach other industries. We're not just trying to stick it to real estate. We want to make sure that we're getting a good range of go ahead.
One final point that I want to say, when I say, and I want to say this actually for anybody out there listening, here's the final nugget here. For anybody that I say change the world, understand the world is what you make it. So just so I say, like, the world can be your kids and your family, or the world could be the city of Des Moines, or the world could be the state of Iowa, or the world could be the United States, or the world could be the entire frickin' world. But just so you know, when you say change the world, like, just so you know, that world is wherever you put that meaning towards that word of the word world.
Yeah.
And again, the world is your oyster, right?
World's your oyster.
So yeah, definitely. We have some very cool guests lined up. So make sure you stay tuned for all of that. If you're not following us on our social media, we are posting behind the scenes content on there, exclusive content. So make sure you check us out over on Instagram and Facebook. It's going to be Failing Adds Up Podcast is our @ handle. So if you want some exclusive content or you want to message us on there, we'll reply. I promise we will respond to you guys. And if you are new, make sure you like and subscribe this video. Make sure you follow our podcast, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.